The film opens with a scene featuring Michelle Mancini, a student at Pendleton University. She is driving and tuning into a radio program called Under the Cover, hosted by Sasha. Meanwhile, a scandal is revealed at the university when a student secretly swaps her roommate's birth control pills with baby aspirin. The girl became pregnant, not aware of the real reason why that happened. Not the best prank one can do to a friend. While listening to this news, Michelle tries to reach for a music CD in the back seat. She nearly hits another car in the process, but is able to avoid an accident. Relieved, she turns on her music and starts singing to her music, unaware that her car is almost out of gas. As night falls, a heavy storm comes out of nowhere. During the storm, Michelle notices her fuel gauge shows that she's running low on gas. She pulls into a nearby gas station, but it looks like nobody has been there for some time. The classic scene for a young woman traveling alone. Shortly after, a strange man with a stutter approaches her car window. Michelle hands him her credit card and instructs him to fill up her tank. The man spots something strange and informs her that her credit card company has a call for her inside the station. Michelle enters the station to take the call, with the man following behind her and locking the door behind them. She soon realizes there's no one on the other end of the line. The man tries to say something to her, but Michelle doesn't want to hear anything and wants to leave immediately. In the heat of the moment, she sprays pepper spray into his eyes, breaks a window, and runs away. The man chases after her, desperately trying to stop her, but is unable to do so. It is then revealed that the man was trying to warn her about an intruder hiding in the back seat of her car. As Michelle drives away, the hidden passenger in the back seat brutally murders her by ending her life with an axe. In the meantime, at the university's coffee shop, a student named Parker scares his friends Natalie and Brenda with a scary story about a horrific massacre that took place in Stanley Hall, which is now a deserted dormitory. However, Paul, a journalism student, ignores this as nothing more than an urban myth. According to Parker's narrative, 25 years ago, a professor had lost his mind. Armed with a hunting knife, he went to Stanley Hall and knocked on every door. Any student unfortunate enough to answer the door met a terrible end as the professor slit their throats. The story ends with the professor taking his own life with the same knife. Following their conversation, Natalie and Brenda decide to visit Stanley Hall. They wonder why the building wasn't demolished and if it was the site of such a horrific event. They begin to suspect that the story might just be an urban legend. If you think this urban legend is true, subscribe to the channel. They stand before the hall's door and chant Bloody Mary 5 times, expecting something paranormal to happen. They laugh it off when nothing happens, finding the whole situation funny. However, they soon hear strange noises from the hall, which frightens them and makes them leave. Just as they're leaving, Damon appears from behind, frightening them. They thought he was trying to scare them with the noises. The next day, news of Michelle's tragic murder begins to circulate. However, it seems that Dean Adams and the campus police officers want to suppress the story, likely to protect the university's reputation. And then, it turns out the group of friends is gathered at the coffee shop, where the news of Michelle's murder is being discussed. Sasha reveals that Michelle was tuned into her radio show at the time of her death. Brenda is worried, thinking that a crazy person might be on the loose on campus. This news upsets Natalie. Later, when she returns to her room, she discovers that her roommate Tosh has been taking lithium pills. That's what you take when you have bipolar symptoms. She then starts to flip through her high school album, where she sees a photo of herself with Michelle. At that moment, Damon approaches Natalie and invites her to hang out to cheer her up. He takes her to a nice place, where Natalie confesses that Michelle was her friend too. Damon empathizes with her, revealing that he too has lost a girlfriend. He tries to flirt with Natalie, but she shuts him down. Afterward, Damon steps out of the car to take a leak, only to be ambushed by the mysterious figure. When Natalie exits the car, she also spots the man, and frightened, she rushes back to the car. However, the car won't start. The hooded figure proceeds to hang Damon from a tree, securing the other end of the rope to the car's rear. The hooded figure then begins to smash the car's roof with an axe. In her panic, she drives off, which leads to the end of Damon's life by hanging. When his lifeless body lands on the car, Natalie escapes to look for help. However, when she returns with Officer Reese, both Damon's body and the car mysteriously vanish. Natalie suspects that the same person who murdered Michelle is responsible for this incident, but Officer Reese ignores her theory. In the following scene, Natalie tells her friends about the terrifying experience. Parker suggests that Damon might have staged the entire event as a prank, given his reputation as the campus's biggest prankster and his love for urban legends. Natalie, however, is convinced that someone is bringing these urban legends to life. Still, her friends remain skeptical of her claims. Later, Natalie visits the library to grab a book on urban legends. She runs into Sasha there, and together they dive into the book. In the book, they encounter the story of the car and the tale about a gang that travels the roads at night. Natalie notices that Damon is the last person to check out the book. Meanwhile, Tasha is in her room, focused on talking to a boy online. She suggests a makeout session and asks him which room he's in, only to receive a response showing that he's in her room. Suddenly, she's attacked from behind. When Natalie enters the room later, she believes that Tasha is simply making out with someone as usual, so she sleeps on her bed. The attacker proceeds to take Tasha's life. The following morning, Natalie discovers Tasha's lifeless body along with a chilling message written in blood on the wall. "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" Dean Adams and Officer Reese arrive to investigate the scene, but they conclude that Tasha must have committed suicide. If you think that the Dean and Officer Reese are once again trying to hide another incident to protect the school, subscribe to the channel. Natalie is becoming increasingly distressed by the recent events. Meanwhile, Paul is doing his investigation into Michelle's murder. He discovers that Michelle was Natalie's high school friend and discusses this with her. Natalie confesses to him about the murders of Damon and Tosh, which she believes are similar to Michelle's. She suspects that a serial killer is copying the methods of various urban legends and notes that it's the 25th anniversary of the Stanley Hall massacre. Paul suggests that if the Stanley Hall massacre had happened, it would have been documented in the university's history books. Thanks to the dean, it probably isn't documented. Upon checking, they find that the history books for the past 2 years are missing. They talk to the janitor, who advises them to speak with Professor Wexler about the matter. When they visit Professor Wexler's office, they stumble upon an axe and a hoodie similar to the killer's. Their suspicion towards the professor grows, and just as they do, the professor himself appears. In the following scene, we see them in Dean Adams' office. Adams reveals to Natalie that he knows her criminal past and informs Paul that he's been dismissed from the university. Afterward, Natalie joins Brenda, who is swimming. She spots a figure who she believes to be the killer, but it turns out to be another girl. Natalie confesses to Brenda about her past, revealing that Michelle was her friend in high school. The two of them had been put on probation after causing a deadly car accident. They had been driving with their headlights off and chased the first driver who flashed their lights at them. Meanwhile, Paul dives into local urban legends and uncovers the truth about the Stanley Hall massacre. It turns out that the massacre did happen, and Professor Wexler, a scholar of American folklore, was the only survivor. A newspaper clipping confirming this was found on the janitor's table. The scene shifts to Dean Adams in the parking lot, where Officer Reese suggests hiring a security guard. She mentions the many issues haunting the campus and expresses concern over Damon's long absence. However, Dean Adams dismisses her worries, insisting that Damon is on vacation and advises her not to contact his family. After Reese leaves, the killer emerges from beneath a car, hurting Adams' leg before crushing him to death. Moving on, Natalie, Brenda, and Sasha are at a fraternity party celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Stanley Hall massacre. At the party, Paul reveals to Natalie the truth about Professor Wexler, which horrifies her. Seeing her distress, Paul comforts her, leading to a tender moment where they kiss. Nice move, Paul. At that moment, Brenda arrives and is visibly upset and angered by the sight of Natalie and Paul together. Meanwhile, Officer Reese hears a noise coming from Professor Wexler's room on campus. Upon investigating, she discovers the room is in a state of chaos, splashed with blood. At the same time, Paul tries to convince everyone at the party about the presence of a killer on campus, but nobody gives a damn what he has to say. Parker even makes fun of him for his claims. Following this, Paul and Sasha decide to leave the party. Later, Parker receives a chilling phone call warning him that he is going to die tonight. He notices that the call came from inside the house and was made under Damon's name. Assuming that Damon is playing a prank inspired by the urban legend of the babysitter, Parker heads upstairs to investigate. However, the caller reveals that the story isn't about the babysitter, but the microwave. Parker then goes and opens the microwave, only to find it filled with blood. Upon witnessing the blood-filled microwave, Parker runs toward the bathroom. However, the killer intercepts him, ties him, and takes his life by forcing a lethal combination of pop rocks and bathroom chemicals down his throat. Moving on, Sasha is hosting a late-night talk show on the campus radio station when she and her assistant become victims of the killer's attack. Her screams are broadcast on live air. The fraternity party guards think it is a prank related to the massacre. Still, Natalie senses that Sasha is in real danger. She hurries to the radio station, only to witness the killer brutally hitting Sasha with an axe. In the aftermath, Natalie encounters Paul and informs him about Sasha's murder. She begins to suspect Paul, but he urges her to leave. They run into Brenda outside, and Paul convinces them that Professor Wexler is the killer. He then guides them into his car and drives them away from the scene. They pull over at a gas station, and while Paul is inside, Natalie and Brenda make a terrible discovery in the trunk of the car: the mutilated body of Professor Wexler. Horrified, they run off into the woods and towards the campus, with Paul chasing them. They get separated as they go deeper into the woods, and Natalie hears Brenda's terrified screams. Natalie manages to grab the attention of the university's janitor, who is passing by in his truck. He offers her a ride, but Natalie spots a hoodie identical to the killer's one inside. She tries to exit the vehicle, but the janitor stops her. Suddenly, another car begins tailing at them and in an aggressive pursuit, forces their truck off the road. The crash results in the janitor's death, but Natalie survives. She escapes on foot and hides in a building nearby. Inside, she comes across the lifeless bodies of her friends in every room and a seemingly dead Brenda on the bed. However, in a shocking turn of events, Brenda regains consciousness and knocks Natalie out. When Natalie regains consciousness, she is confronted with a shocking revelation. Brenda is the killer. Brenda explains that she is looking for vengeance for her fiancé, David Evans, who was killed in the car accident caused by Natalie and Michelle. I guess that makes sense. Brenda tries to remove Natalie's kidney, but her plans are ruined when Officer Reese arrives on the scene and holds Brenda at gunpoint. However, Brenda manages to stab Officer Reese with a switchblade and takes her gun. At this moment, Paul enters the scene and tries to take the gun away from Brenda. During the fight, Officer Reese manages to shoot Brenda in the arm, causing her to drop the gun. Natalie quickly takes control of the fallen weapon and shoots Brenda, who stumbles and falls out of a window. With Brenda out of the picture, or should I say window, Natalie and Paul leave the scene to look for help for the injured Officer Reese. As they make their escape, Paul and Natalie talk about how their crazy story will most likely turn into an urban legend, with the true facts changing over time. Paul then asks, if this is going to be an urban legend, what's the twist? As he asks the question, once again, a plot twist, Brenda appears from the back seat holding an axe. Caught off guard, Paul loses control of the car and crashes it on a bridge. The crash sends Brenda flying through the windshield and falling into the river below. In the end, a group of students at a different university are seen talking about Brenda's murderous rampage. They mention that her body was never found, casting doubt on if the story is true or not. However, one young woman, revealed to be Brenda herself, disagrees with their vision of the story. She claims that the story has been changed and proceeds to narrate the true version of the story. With this, the movie ends. Thank you for watching the recap. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next episode.